Hey guys, Carlos here from AbrotherAbroad.com, back again with the Abroadcast, where my whole goal is to get you traveling, and if you want to live abroad, get you living abroad. So today we're going to talk about exactly that. Now, there are a lot of people who want to start traveling for an extended period, and there are a lot of people who are traveling right now who would prefer to live abroad instead of in their own country. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Now, when you think about travel and living abroad, when you think about the personalities, there's a continuum of people. So you have on one side, you have the tourists who go abroad for a little bit. They go abroad down to Cancun or Ibiza for a couple weeks. They live it up and they go back to the normal life. And on the far opposite end of the spectrum, you have what we call expats who have completely left their country and live somewhere else like indefinitely. Along the way, there are a lot of different personalities. And if you're watching this and if you either want to travel or want to live abroad, you're somewhere in there. So what I'm going to talk about today is how to start, where you're probably at, how to move to the next step, whether you're traveling and you want to live abroad or you're living abroad and you want to stay abroad and live better, and some concerns you should think about. All right, so let's get into it. So there are pretty much four types of people abroad. You have number one, like I said, the tourists. The tourists are on vacation. I'm not really even counting them. The tourists are on vacation. They're leaving home. They've been working all year. They're just trying to blow off some steam, take some shots, do whatever they need to do to survive, survive that vacation, recharge, and go back home. Not holding anything against you. But that is usually where the wanderlust and the travel bug starts. You realize there are other places where people are living differently, eating different foods, have a different approach to life, and you like it. So the next step is usually the backpacker or the long-term traveler, whether you're taking a backpack or not. So something happens and you decide, when you have the time, to go abroad for like 3 to 9 months. And you sometimes live in a single country, sometimes you bounce across the region, and sometimes you travel the world. Backpackers, travelers, whatever you call them. They are exploring the world, and that's a cool spot to be. The fourth one is the trendy thing that's coming out, the nomad or the digital nomad, right? There was a paper that came out, it was like 1996 or 1999, and a book that the guy wrote where he named this group digital nomads. And they're people who live abroad, travel, make a living online or remotely, and they just bounce around from place to place. It's a cool life. So we'll get into that too. And the last one on the spectrum are the digital, what I call digital expats. Now, I'm not trying to be trendy here, I'm just trying to be descriptive. Normally, an expat or an expatriate is someone who lives in a country that is not their own. They're generally hired by a company, a multinational, go to a different country. Happens a lot like in the oil sector, finance sector, if somebody's moving to a different country in Europe, usually within the EU, and they're paid by that company, and they live in a different country, fully different life, but they're settling in one place. So what's the difference between the traditional expat that we know and the digital expat? Well, actually, it's kind of like, I'll compare it to the hipsters. So hipsters kind of went extinct around 2017, right? They grew out of the whole phase of criticizing people and being overly critical of beer and stuff, had families and grew up. So they aged out. And I have no idea where they are now because it's a lot easier to find the cool neighborhood when you're hunting for hipsters, but they're extinct. So a lot of digital nomads that have been bouncing from place to place every 1 month or 3 months, they got kind of tired of it and they aged out. They still got that income that they make online or that thing that supports them to live remotely, but they don't want to go home. And usually, from what I've seen, they found 1 to 3 countries that they love. And they settle there for multiple years. Hence, no longer being a digital nomad, they're an expat. They make their income digitally, and everything that defines them from a professional sense happens online. So those are the 4 types you got, right? We're about 4 minutes in. I'll see if I can get a little quicker with this. You got the backpacker, you got the digital nomad, and you have the digital expat. So if you are, regardless of where you're at in the spectrum, hang around, and I'll give you some tips. And if you are, let's see if I get hit. All right. If you are a savvy traveler and you have some hints to give, please drop them in the comments and let Let these young bucks know how to do it. Let me know how to do it. I'm up for travel tips. Okay. So if you are just coming off of vacation, you decide that you want to travel and you want to go traveling for 3 to 6 months. Backpacking, as they call it, right? Okay. This is the tip that I have. Several tips. The only two things you need to make this happen are time and money. You really don't need a plan. Time and money. So how much time do you need? As long as you can come up with 3 to 9 months, 3 months being the minimum because it's that perfect sweet spot because it's going to take 3 weeks to chill out, another week to actually figure out what you're doing, another week to settle into a place, and then you're going to move to somewhere else and you're going to repeat the process, probably a country a month at least. And if it's any less than 3 months, you're going to feel like you got gypped. So aim for 3 months. 9 months is 9 months is the point where most of the travelers I've met that are backpacking, they burn out about that time and they want to go home. So come up with 3 to 9 months. Now, how do you do that? If you're under 25, it is easiest for you, way easier for you than it is for anybody older. If you're under 25, before you get your job, tell them that you need to take 3 months off. If you are in college, if you're in university, and you can disappear for a year or you can disappear for a summer, do it. If you've already been accepted to university and they'll defer your enrollment, do it. If you're in your 30s and you are going the route of getting hired at a new job to get a promotion or just getting hired at a new job to get your pay raise, then tell them that you're going to take 3 to 6 months off, 3 to 9 months off, if you can get it, right? So that's where you get the time. On top of that, if you have something crazy that goes on in your life, you get divorced, you get fired, you lose everything, use that opportunity to just squeeze in some time for yourself and go travel. Now, money. When it comes to backpacking, it's actually a pretty easy equation. So figure out exactly how long you're traveling for and figure out which region you want to travel to. Once you got the region, as in, do you want to travel Southeast Asia? Do you want to travel South America? Do you want to travel Europe? Once you know the area that you're going to travel to, you can look up the cost of daily travel. Now, I'm going to put it in the links. I've done some research on the cost of living for expats in places. All you do is take the number per month that I have down there and multiply it by 1.5 to 2 because it's going to cost you more. Rough number is if you want to travel South America right now, because I'm here, plan on spending $50 to $75 per day. So if you're going to travel for 3 months, that's $4,500 you need to save. If you're going to travel through Southeast Asia and you're avoiding the expensive spots like Bali right now, avoiding that, or the super expensive spots in Thailand like Phuket, plan on spending between $35 and $60 a day, depending on how much you can budget. For the Balkans in Europe, plan on spending $50 to $75 per day. On top of that, add your flights and think about how you're going to get around if you mind using buses, and you'll have yourself a plan there. So you'll have the time and money to make it happen. Now, if you are just deciding now to start traveling, where should you go? I recommend taking advantage of what I call the trails. Now, in every region that's super friendly to travel, so I'm talking about Southeast Asia, Thailand, starting with there, South America, Central America, and the Balkans, so many people travel through that they already have the infrastructure for you to travel. So what do I mean by that? There are hostels that are super cheap, really, really nice. And when you show up, they'll tell you pretty much what there is to see there, how you're going to see it, what tours are available. They'll give you a deal on it. They'll tell you the shuttle to take to the next place, the bus. They'll tell you when you need to fly, when you need to bus. On top of that, if you're traveling by yourself, it can get kind of lonely. And a way to avoid that loneliness is being in a place where you're going to meet people like you. Now, the places that you should think about traveling. All right. If you're just starting out, the first place should be Thailand. If you are under 30 and you're thinking about where to go, hands down, go to Thailand. If you are 30 or over and you're traveling for the first time, I recommend traveling to Buenos Aires. Okay, so if you are 30 or over and you're traveling for the first time and you're worried about difficulties and things, Buenos Aires is my number one bet if you're adventurous. You're going to have to learn a little Spanish, but the way that it's set up, Southeast Asia is more if you're younger and ready to party, and you're ready to have some loose morals. South America and Argentina specifically, along with Chile, are just a little slower pace. It's more about the culture, food and wine and things like that. Stuff that you appreciate more in your late 20s, early 30s than you do in your early 20s. Now, the other alternative I highly recommend is going to the Balkans. If you don't know where to start with the Balkans, just go to Croatia and then work your way east. Additionally, Montenegro, Albania, very good spots that have that same travel infrastructure, but you can travel on a budget. Because if you are trying to stretch your money for 3 months, staying in Paris ain't gonna work. Sorry to tell you that. Okay. But that is if you are deciding to start traveling. I'll talk more about that later. So what about the rest, all right? What about the nomads, if you're trying to go nomad and becoming an expat? All right. I already did a video on becoming a digital nomad, but let's talk about why you would want to. There are 2 reasons. One, you've decided you want to travel longer and your money is not going to work if you're just traveling. Because when you're traveling, honestly, just backpacking, you shouldn't work. Don't work. Just enjoy the trip, make the memories. That money is an investment in your happiness in the future. You can earn more money later. But once that money starts to run out and you want to stay on the road, that's when you're thinking digital nomad, right? So people that are nomading want to experience countries longer, as in stay in one country a little bit longer, or they just want to stay on the road longer. And it's about the only way that they can do that. When you are considering becoming a nomad, think about it this way. You are trying to taste the foods that you enjoyed the most, even more deeply and a lot more often. So what do I mean by that? It's a metaphor for travel. The countries and cultures that you enjoyed, you're trying to dig more deeply into. If you liked Southeast Asian cultures and you want to dig into Japanese culture and Thai culture, this is your way to do that, because it's going to give you that chance that you're not going to have watching TV, not going to have watching Anthony Bourdain reruns or reading books. You can actually live there, which is kind of cool. So that's number 1. Number 2, doing the nomad thing allows you to sculpt your life, right? So I talked about in the last video, quality of life. There are a lot of places in the world where you can buy a much higher quality of life than you can in the US or Europe for a lot cheaper money. As in when I was in Buenos Aires, I lived a great quality of life in terms of happiness, culture, food and everything for a lot cheaper. But beyond that, perhaps you are a certain type of person that just wants to experience something and immerse themselves in something. Okay, thinking outside the box. What if you were an LGBT person that lives in a very conservative state in the US and you just haven't felt what it's like to be able to walk outside with your partner and not get looked at weird? Well, in Chile here, I wish I could find somebody right now. In Chile, you can do whatever you want. They don't care. They're happy to see you happy. Same with Uruguay. Same with in Thailand. So you're LGBT, you just want to be out and you don't want to get judged. So what about if you're a black person from the US and you've been getting weird looks? You feel like you've been getting weird looks your whole life? Go move to Accra. Move to Accra, Ghana. Move down to South Africa for a little while. Move down to a place with people like you where you don't have to explain yourself. What if you're a woman that's felt like you've had to deal with the patriarchy your entire life and you want to go live with some feminists? Not live with them, but live in a country that leans more towards a feminist bent. Go down to Argentina, move to Scandinavia for a little while, or move to Japan, where you don't have to worry about all the sexual harassment as much as you would have to in, say, sorry to say it, India. So nomadism is a tool to sculpt your life. There are other aspects of it, like you can use it as a personal finance tool or whatever, but we're not talking about that right now. So what is the key aspect? Okay, with travelers, the 2 keys are time and money. As long as you can create those, time and money, then you can give yourself a chance to travel. Maxing out life as a nomad, the 2 things you need to think about are money, sustainably, as in building a business, and on top of that, where am I at? Okay, money, building a business and making it sustainable, but thinking about location. Because when you travel through a place for 2 weeks, you're not investing yourself by learning the language. You're not investing yourself by paying taxes. And you're not investing yourself by worrying about complex visas. When you're a digital nomad, or nomad in general, you are. So think about what makes you happy in life. What are the things you want the most? Is it you want time with your kids? Is it you want food? Is it you want to surf? Is it you want access to healthy food, filling, tasty food as a vegetarian? And pick your place around that. Pick the places that you go around that. On top of that, the people that are there, the cultures, are you willing to invest and learn the language? Because if you are, you'll get a lot more return from your trip than you would if you just drop in as an expat using them. So for nomads, think about how you're going to make the money and really, really thinking about what locations you want to invest yourself in. Because one of the things in terms of location that I found out in the study I did is most nomads after year 2, they return to the same locations over and over, whether it's seasonal and they go back to the same location for summer, winter, for July every year, they go back. If you invest yourself in a place and you pick places to get to know now that you know you're going to want to go back to later, you're essentially cultivating homes. So that's for the nomads. If you're interested in that, I will do a full video on just the nomad stuff. Now, what about this last thing that I'm talking about with the digital expats? Let's see. How am I going to get through this traffic here? You guys gonna give me tips? No, you can't, because nobody's even watching this thing right now. Okay. The digital expat. This is a new idea that I had based on the research I was doing. Like I said, you have normal expats and you have expats who run into different issues by working online and living in places. This is a new thing. Once upon a time when expats were hired by the companies that they're working for, it was completely legal. They'd get work permits. They'd get people to sponsor them and to help them get settled in. They would get their housing paid for. Now, as a digital expat, you have to worry about things like visas. You have to worry about getting residency permits. You have to worry about handling and understanding your own taxes. So, is it worth it? Absolutely. If you're nomading and you hit that point where, okay, before I started doing this video series, I reached out to some readers and asked, what are your biggest pain points? Number 1 was money. Number 2 was taxes. Number 3 was visas. And number 4 was feeling like you're a part of a community in 2 senses. 1, having people like you wherever you're at. And 2, living in a place where they accept you and they want you for something beyond being an ATM. And this is important to think about if you're going to go the digital expat route. So a digital expat is digging into a place that they've realized that they love. Now, how would I define this? I would say you've been in the place about a year, at least. You're considering buying property there. You're looking into a residency visa, and you're starting to ask yourself the tax questions. These things are good. The one thing I would warn is don't do this. Don't fully commit in a tax residency sense or getting the residency in general until you've scouted out the world and you know this is the place you want to live. On top of that, don't buy a house in the place until you've lived there at least a year in one specific spot. You know the laws and you know this is where you're going to want to live and own the property for at least 5 years. Okay, so digital expat. Now that we've defined it, what does that mean and what do you need to do now? Honestly, nothing yet. I'm just trying to make you aware of the idea because once you cross that point from being a traveler that bounces between countries to wanting to live in a country, the attitudes of the people change, the laws that apply to you change, your tax liability changes, and how you plan your finances from there on out changes. So simply being aware of that, once you decide to stay in a place longer than 180 days, you become a digital expat, and you're not employed by a local company and you don't own a local company either. You are a digital expat. Think about taxes. If you live in any place, most places, 90% of places, longer than 180 days, they start to tax you. If you have lived there for 180 days and you don't file to pay your taxes, but at some point you want to become a citizen, it will become difficult. They will ask you about that. I know, my friends have tried this before. So taxes. On top of that, visas. Why do the visas matter? Because number 1, the visas that allow you to stay for 60 days versus the visas that allow you to stay for a year differ a lot in what they allow, what they're going to cost you, and what they ask for return. Now, I want you to think about something. Everybody's been hearing about these digital nomad visas, right? Digital nomad visas are visas that countries are offering, branding them as digital nomad visas. They're valid and they let you stay for 6 months to a year, and you generally don't have to pay taxes. Here's the fine print. The time that you spend on those visas does not count towards citizenship or residency. On top of that, you have no more rights than a tourist. The kicker for every single digital nomad visa I've seen is that they are renewable once and then you have to leave for 6 months to a year. That makes it a little difficult to make a place your home. So when you clearly state that you want to be a resident and you want to live there longer, the rules change. How can you see this in reality? Okay, something to compare the digital nomad visa to is the rentista visa, which is very common in Latin America, the pensionado, or the independent, it's like independent financial means visa or something like that, in Portugal. These are not visas, they're actually residencies, valid for 2 years, renewable. And for all of the Latin American countries, and Portugal and Spain, every year that you spend on those visas counts towards your permanent residency, in which you won't have to worry about filing again every year, and you'll be eligible for citizenship. That is what you want to aim for. That is something that a digital expat needs to look into. So how do those visas, the rentista visas and the pensionado visas, how were they applicable to nomads versus expats differently? Okay, so if you're a digital nomad and all you're doing right now is focusing on making money, living in a place for 2 months, spending the money, and then moving on, you likely won't have the paperwork to get one of these residencies. The paperwork you're going to need is proof that you do have income, proof that you're employed by somebody, even if that employer is you, proof that you own property somewhere, proof that you have a base, and that you have history, and that you're stable. All these things, the average digital nomad has a really difficult time with. But the average digital expat probably has an LLC, has probably been filing their taxes, probably has a virtual box somewhere, and all these things add up to a permanent situation that they can build in whatever country they want. So I ranted on that, but taxes and visas. The next thing I'll mention is the location, the country you choose. If you are committing to be in a place for 2 to 5 years, even 10 years, because for some of these places it takes 10 years to get citizenship, and then from there you're going to be living there for life, right? You have that passport. Making sure that you pick a place that is stable in terms of politics and economics in a way that will affect you. So an example of social undercurrents in politics would be Bali. For a while, there was a campaign, there was a task force actually on Bali that was created specifically by immigration to find foreigners that were quote unquote misbehaving. If you look at the trends in the things that popped up in the media that were enforced, they tended to be things that were highlighted on social media by the populace as things that they didn't like. Those are the things that got attention. Now, why this might not be a regulation thing, if you're living in a country that will put together a task force to find people like you, you might want to consider whether or not you dedicate yourself long-term to that place. Now, in terms of economics, Argentina. I love Argentina. Fun fact, if you stay in Argentina for 2 years, you get citizenship if you stay there legally. Their economy is, it's in the tank. It's been in the tank a while. However, because of the blue dollar and the gray market, as long as you are making dollars, you are close to immune from what happens with the economy. From a tax standpoint, it's gray but loose. So this means that even though Argentina isn't in the best situation in terms of taxes, in terms of the economy, you can live there pretty well. Now, to help you out on this journey of discovery, I'm going to paste a few articles in the comments. The cheapest places that you can live, the cities that I recommend, the visas that are available, and some starter articles on thinking about real estate in the places that you want to live, just to get you off on the right foot, okay? So this was a longer than intended video to introduce you to the continuum of starting to travel, deciding you want to travel more, and then deciding you want to live abroad and the things to think about. Once you get past the point of staying in places 3 months at a time or living abroad for 3 months at a time, the things you need to look into are income, steady income, visas, taxes, and real estate. And as well as considering from a very soft standpoint, is the place that you are considering living somewhere that you want to invest fully, as in learning the language, becoming a part of the culture, dealing with the ups and downs, following the politics, and dealing with the social currents of it. No matter what, even if you stay in a place for a year or two and it doesn't turn out the way that you planned or think, it's usually a good experience. So don't have any fear on that. And with that, I'm going to let you get back to your travel research. And I'm going to get back to walking and try not to get hit by a car. This is Carlos from abrotherabroad.com. I'll see you soon.